This is Andrew Wicklund from Project Risk Consultants. We go over the System Options menu, which is located under the Tools menu bar item. So we're going to go to the Tools menu bar item. Third option is the System Options. This is an important screen, not only just for users, but also for IT administrators as well. So the first tab on the left-hand side up at the top left here is the System Modes. I'll go through each one of the options. The first one, especially for users of Primavera P6, P5, etc., is a very important option. It's whether you want manual schedule analysis or live scheduling. So if you do not have that check marked, every time you make a change in Primavera Risk, it's going to recalculate the network for you. So if you check mark that, you can make 10 changes, then hit F9 to schedule that. So for larger files, especially if you bring in a file, say, that had 15,000 items and you wanted to try and risk analyze all or part of that, if you didn't have that check marked, if you're playing what if scenarios, every time you would make a change, it would recalculate the network. It's very time intensive, and it's probably not the way you want to go. If you have maybe a 200 line item file, 1,000 line items where it's very quick to reschedule, that might be okay to do live scheduling. So live scheduling would be more in line with Microsoft project users, where you make a change and it recalculates the network, etc. So prompt before creating a new link from a task, or a new task from a link, it's actually going to, if you were to type in a link to an activity that didn't exist, it would create that activity for you. So if you linked activity number 1 finish to start to activity number 4, if activity number 4 didn't exist, it would prompt you before creating it. Do you want to create activity 4 because it doesn't exist right now? So because of the way this scheduling tool works and how you can copy and paste data, you could actually copy or paste data and create 100 activities without actually knowing it. So something to keep in mind if you're doing any kind of bulk editing from Microsoft Excel, etc. So clicking on the task will snap your filter to the start, middle, or end of an activity on the Gantt chart. So if I scroll way to the right on my Gantt chart and click on an activity, it snaps back to the start of that task for me. So that's what that option will do for you. Check mark the next one if you want to allow tasks or activities to be moved with your mouse. So once again, I can take and scroll over these activities and I can move these left and right. So that chooses whether or not you want to be able to let the activity get moved with the mouse or not. The next one, the left splitter bar, snaps to the column edge in the Gantt chart. You'll notice when I double click these options, you can see how it'll snap to the edge of the column. If I turn that on, I double click that, it snaps to the edge of the very last one instead of just the next column. The undo buffer size, skipped an option here, move selection down after enter. So if you hit the enter button, is it going to stay on that activity, or is it going to move down to the next activity line? You can set the undo buffer size. You really shouldn't have to edit this, but in theory you could add more and more memory to the undo size. So if you wanted to go 1,000 steps backwards, in theory you could go backwards forever, and you can even change the buffer size to where, oh, I could only go back 200 steps. I really need to go back 300 for whatever reason. The default undo buffer is so large that you should never need to go back more steps than that. You'd probably forget what you had done at that point. Automatically complete distributions using the quick risk percentage. Normally you don't want to do that. If you've put in a quick risk of 90% minimum, 100% most likely, 120% maximum, once you fill in one of those areas, it would fill in the other two values based on your distributions and your quick risk. It's probably not what most users want. The default option is that that's turned on though. So if I typed in 10 in the most likely, it would base the minimum and the maximum based on whatever I'd put in the quick risk last time. Show milestone start and finish dates. Not an important option really. The next tab though we go to is the system folders, and this one really is critical. Oftentimes when you're doing a server setup, you'll want these not to be, by default they're going to be mapped to the C drive, but if these might need to be mapped up front to whether it's the user folder or the shared folders somewhere on a server where users can get to them, where an environment, a project could share these templates. So if I set up a scoring system template for my whole project team, I would probably want everyone to be able to get to that. Or if I set up a quick risk template for my entire team, I would probably want that saved in the shared folders. The user folders as well. Maybe it's something I set up to run a scenario that I don't need other people to be able to use. I might save those to my user folders. I might need to map these to an area on the server so they don't get lost later on. So by default, this is going to map to the C drive for server installs, or even so these can be put where the user wants them to. You might need to remap these. And right in the middle, you'll notice it does give you the option to create a temporary backup every 10 minutes. And it'll save it in the same user folder as the plan or in the application data folder. I've mentioned this in other modules, but it's very important. There is no database backend. You might want to have this create a temporary backup, but it will only save it. You can have it save it every so often, but if you don't click save on this, it will not save the base file. These are flat files. There's no database backend. It's like a Microsoft Word file. If you close it and you didn't click save, you may lose a lot of that data. Same thing with Primavera Risk files. If you don't save them, these are flat files, you can lose data. So it might be a good idea to keep this create temporary backup on in case you had a system crash or anything like that happen. But it's good to get in the habit of saving these often if you're making changes, because you can lose a lot of data real quickly.